Jesi milostivi čovekoljubiv Bog i tebi slavu uznosimo, Otcu i Sinu i Svetome Duhu, sada i u vekove vekova.
In a world of shadows and secrets untold, where primeval stories make the brave go cold, mighty gods on high and realms below, whispers of legends that shape each soul. And nightmarish dreams, cryptids lurking, nothing's as it seems, giants walking, angels and demons fight, only truth can bring the light. Through the echoes of time, the tales unfold, mysteries arise as the prophecies are foretold, from valiant knights to buried treasure, this podcast brings nothing but pleasure. Welcome to Mysteries of Majesty. Study with us, and don't be a travesty. Theology, mythology, fantasy, and horror. Dungeons and dragons, Skyrim and Mordor. And Mordor powers haunt the evening in gothic castles where they're screaming. Wizards cast spells in their towers tonight, exploiting enigmas hidden from our sight. Archaeologists make excavations deep of the ancient tombs where pharaohs sleep. In the dust of ages we chronicles keep, storytelling's power of monsters that creep. Mysteries and Majesty is the place for you to learn about this haunted space. From scholarship to manuscripts of old, unlock the secrets of wisdom and gold.
About a year and a half ago, when Sean and I were creating this special Fantastic Friday segment that we named and baptized into Eerie Encounters, our goal was to start covering true eyewitness reports and true horror stories when it comes to the seriously people from any walk of life just witnessing the paranormal and the supernatural. But over time, we started also covering other fringe topics as well as biblical, historical theology, archaeology, and other stuff that we will find interesting and beneficial for the audience on Friday. So now, after a while, we're finally back to that same segment of Eerie Encounters where Dain is coming to replace Sean, who is busy tonight. And we'll be covering 7 true eyewitness horror stories. And I'm very excited because some of these are really spooky. And I'm upset with myself because I was reading them Tuesday midnight, and I live alone, so I wasn't happy with that decision. But I'm like, hey, if I die, I die. I just have to do the things for the podcast. So welcome to episode 182. Woohoo! We're almost coming to number 200. We have our dear friend and scholar, almost Mr. Masters, back on the channel, joining us for tonight. I'm very grateful for your time, Dain, that you dedicated this time for the audience and myself. I just want to ask you what is new with you, and if you can please share something about your new ministry, maybe give us website and what is your vision for that, how is God leading you, and things of that sort.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's really nice to be here with you. I always have a great time doing whatever we do here, reading stories or talking about theology. It's always fun. So I actually did graduate with my master's in biblical studies. I haven't got my degree yet, but I'm waiting for that to arrive in the mail. I have my gown and my hat and everything they shipped to me because it's a remote sort of seminary thing. So yeah, I'm happy to be done with that. It's been 5 years and I've been just slogging away, and I'm just kind of done with that. So I'm really happy that that's over.
I'm proud of you, man. I thank you for sharing this with us. I didn't know. I thought maybe you're just taking a break, but I'm proud of you that you finished that. Many people don't
Yeah.
finish even bachelor's degree. I know when I went to Moody, almost 50% of students gave up eventually. So what you did is
Yeah.
a big thing. So congrats.
Yeah, it just takes a lot of going back and reading and constantly, and it just gets to the point where you just want it to be over. So I'm really glad it's over. I have along the way I'm buying all these books, and like you, I have a book buying addiction, and I have this great idea, or I hear this podcast and I buy a few books, and then they just sit on the shelf and I have to study, and I'm like, I want to read those books, but I got to study. And so now I can start organizing those projects and actually reading those books that I bought and do something with it, which I'm really excited about, which does lead me to my project that I'm doing. I have a personal blog. It's godmakesnew.org. And that's sort of just, I post anything on there. And then I'm in the process of launching a research and learning community that concentrates on the ancient Near Eastern religions in contrast or comparison with the biblical text of the Old Testament. So the idea there is, if you're familiar with John Walton or Dr. Heiser and some of the conversations about context and how context is king, and sort of observing and reading some of the cultures, literature from the ancient Near East that surrounded Israel and that had an influence on the biblical text. It's reading that in community and sort of discovering that in a deeper way, and how it will inform the Old Testament and what we get out of the Old Testament, what it means to us, and hopefully, like Heiser said, recovering the ancient worldview or thinking like an Israelite. So that's kind of the goal of it. So looking forward to that. That's not done yet, but I'm working on it.
So wait, you're saying you have a little Israelite living in your head for free,
Yeah.
rent free? Man, how do you live with it?
Yeah, it's like they're so annoying.
It's like context. You can't even quote the Bible verse to encourage someone because like context.
Yeah, actually,
That's a good meme. I loved
an
it.
ancient Israelite would say, "Nerd." Yeah, total
That's
nerd
good.
here. Proud of it.
Yeah,
So
you
nothing
should
wrong with
be.
that.
You should be. You're a proud master degree student, nerd, and a minister. Like, what else is to be expected in life? You're accomplished father and husband. I mean, come on, like life can be too much better. So I'm glad how God has been leading you and blessing you. And I'm looking forward to dissect these 7 spooky stories with you tonight.
Yeah.
We filed these stories from Reddit. Sometimes we get our stories from credible authors who have really great and amazing 5-star reviews on Amazon. We get those books or ebooks. We read those stories. We share them. But for tonight, I just decided to read some of the stories I've been piling up from internet a while ago, and Sean and I never managed to finish. So I'll start with the first one. And of course, these stories don't have titles. They're just stories. Last Christmas, I was over at my fiance's place. The two of us were doing homework and just sort of hanging out. During a lull in the conversation, I heard what I thought sounded like tears screeching on the pavement. I'm sorry, tires. This is bad spelling. Tires screeching on the pavement. It was very far away, and given that downtown was nearby and I'm partially deaf, I shouldn't have been even able to hear it. So here's the first mystery. The lady is half deaf, yet she heard these tires screeching on the pavement. I didn't mention the sound because my fiance didn't seem bothered. So I brushed it off as sound traveling wired in the city. 5 minutes later, it happens again, but closer this time. So whatever she's hearing, it's approaching them. It's getting closer and closer. And of course, she's getting worried. My fiance looked over at me with her eyebrow raised. So I'm sorry, this is a guy who is partially deaf. So he says his girlfriend, his fiancée, look at him with her eyebrow raised. Again, downtown is closed, and we brush it off as noise coming from there. But the next time was about 5 blocks away. It happened 30 seconds after the other, which is way too fast for anybody to travel from downtown to where we were. And that's a sound logical reasoning. We both noticed something this time. The first thing is that the pitch was changing continuously, so it couldn't be a recording. And the second thing, it wasn't a screech of tires, but an indescribable, inhuman scream. We looked at each other and laughed sort of half heartedly while trying to still make light of our situation only to be cut off. So they're laughing because they were nervous and they were scared. So sometimes when Shannon and I cover these stories, so what you would see, for example, in movies is when people are tense or they're lost in the woods or somewhere else, let's say suddenly the light disappears and it's almost like switching off and playing with the light or with the electricity. People who are in these situations, some of them would cry, some of them would yell, but some of them would laugh. This is their way of coping and trying to, not go nuts. Whatever was scream had gotten to the end of our street in 10 seconds. We both jumped into action, started locking windows and doors, and were halfway down the hall to her room when the fifth and final wail sounded. I kid you not. This thing must have been at the apartment steps. I'll stop here because the story is actually short. Dain, try to imagine if you're the guy, you get in bed a little bit in your younger age, times, and your younger age, you're dating your soon-to-be wife, you're walking downtown, to your apartment, and you hear this thing, and you're like, well, I shouldn't be hearing this because this is far, and I'm half deaf. How is it that I'm able to hear this? And this thing is getting closer and closer with some inhuman screech, reminds me of the screeching owl Lilith or the Mothman. And then they start locking themselves out. How would you behave?
It makes me think of like, were other people hearing this too? Or was it just them hearing it? Because like when I had my alien kind of experience in Sedona, my eyes were closed, but I saw green. And if it would have been coming through my eyelids, it would have been like not totally as green as it was because it would have been coming through the blood and the skin. So that tells me it was in my mind, but it was no less real, So it's like when things like this happen, I feel like, were they just hearing it? Because he's deaf, how could he hear it like that loud unless it was in his head, But that's paranormal does that. Like paranormal things can do that to you. It's not just in your head. It's obviously spiritual or something. But anyways,
like telepathically communicating with you, just like God can sometimes talk to the prophets telepathically in the dream. So why wouldn't the other spiritual beings who are on the other side, on the evil side, on the dark side, be able to do the same? I believe that's completely legit.
Visually as well as auditorily, too, I think. And touch too. I mean, you can. Oh, my daughter works at a bakery locally here, and she actually had a ghost come up behind her and like give her a zinger on her back. She was just working in the bakery, and all of a sudden she's like, "Whoo!" She feels this like zinger in her back, and she looks, and there's like nobody there. And yeah, it's totally haunted. This old bakery in town. It's like goes back hundreds of years or 100 years or so. Yeah. So I mean, anyways, yeah, it happens.
Yeah, speaking of spiritual beings being able to touch us, I don't want to reveal too much information, but I have a good, godly, older male friend who didn't want to reveal every detail of this experience, but he told me that once while he was laying down after the prayer or during the prayer, that this may sound too crazy to some people, but I believe him that he witnessed something. I don't know if his interpretation is correct, but he's not crazy. He's actually a very intellectual guy. He's I don't know. I don't want to reveal too much because I don't want him, if he's listening to this or maybe his friends or family, to know that I'm talking about who I'm talking about. But either during or after his prayer, he was just laying. He wasn't asleep. He felt literally a hand touching him somewhere here. And for him, that was like as if Jesus came and just touched him as a comfort or confirmation that he hears his prayers and that he's there with my friend, that he's not alone. I started asking my friend told me this a while ago, and when I started asking him more questions, he was willing to answer on some, but on some he was like, I don't want to talk about it because for him this was personal. So, but even if it wasn't Jesus, let's say it wasn't Jesus, he still felt hand, and he told me he saw it. And if he was praying to God, demons don't have that authority and power to trump prayer sent out to God and play with you, because God has your back. Not even going into the a biblical theology about the guardian angels and all of that. So he felt something. Was it Jesus literally? Was it guardian angel? I don't know, but I don't believe that demonic powers would have that power unless he would pray to them. But he's a man of God. So I never forgot that story, because I was like, wow, like I don't have any quote unquote crazy, in a positive way, crazy experience like that. But people throughout the world go through these things. They hear, they witness, they something, and they didn't consume anything. It wasn't hallucination. It wasn't like they're super tired, even though all of these things can happen and can cause or trigger something. He's not mentally ill. So yeah, I just want to say people witness these things, and I believe they're completely possible. But I'm always one of those guys who never witnessed these things. So I'm like, I'll just have to believe your word. So in this case, the guy is partially deaf, and he heard this voice five times, and like he says, it's an inhuman voice, getting closer and closer, louder and louder. And of course, they're running back home, closing and blocking and locking all the windows and doors. And I'm like, I'm not laughing at them, because try to put yourself in shoes of someone who is coming back late at night home and feel like someone is following them. That's like 101 scenario from most of the horror movies. So I'm like, I'm not laughing at you. I believe you witnessed something, but what?
Right.
I dare not to presume, I don't know.
Yeah. It reminds me of alien abduction stories, and how, like, I don't know how many, probably millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people who have had all these experiences and stuff. Like, obviously they're not just making stuff up, not all of them, right? Like, something happened. And the vast majority, I feel like, when they call on Christ or they become a Christian, it goes away, is what I've heard. I don't think it's everyone, though. And I think of Jesus when he talked about how certain demons needed prayer and fasting in order to conquer versus just prayer. So there's that element of it too. But, back to your friend, I feel like that's probably very unlikely. I mean, I get shivers sometimes when I pray. It's just like, and it's not normal. Like, it could be my emotions, I suppose, but to me, I don't think it is. I it's like Holy Spirit shivers sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. I feel like I can feel the presence,
And that's amazing. Reminds me when God was, and some scholars may see that this was actually Jesus being embodied, because if we compare the verses that no one has seen the Father, right? But regardless of if it was Jesus or the Father, or both of them walking with Adam and Eve in the cool of the garden, how fortunate were the first people, or at least people in the garden, to have that presence and communion of God. They didn't have to have visions. They didn't need prophecies. They didn't need any special word of knowledge, or like, oh, God will reveal himself to you in dream. No, they were like waking up, or like, oh, maybe time to do the Priscae activities, time to farm, time to tend the animals, time for each other romantically, and time for God. Like, let's meet with God at this time, at this location, because this is our sacred time walking with the Lord. It's like it's almost like a fairy tale, but not in a fancy way. It's like it's so beautiful, so like so fantastic. But and again, in a true form, not in a fictional form. So that's the opposite side. That's the supernatural part of our realm, of our faith, of our of our life that we want to experience. We don't want to experience the demonic, but that still happens. So let me just finish because it's only a few sentences left. He says that so him and his fiancée, bolted into her room and she ripped an older book off her shelf. I have never seen someone skip through pages so fast. Next thing I know, we're taking protective measures and actively trying not to think about what just happened. A few hours later, with us not making a sound during that time, her mother comes home and we race to tell her our story. It takes her about 10 minutes before she looked us both in our eyes and says, "That sounds like a banshee." I don't know I don't know what it was or what happened to it, but what it hands down the spookiest thing that I have ever experienced to this day. And that was a short story. So for me, the biggest, well, two biggest mysteries after we covered most of the story in this one paragraph, two mysteries are: first, what book did his fiancée grab from the shelf that helped them getting so-called protective measures against this demonic attack? I hope it was a Bible and not some occultic book. So that was my question because it's not revealed, and I'm very curious. The second thing, yeah, I agree with the question that the author asked, like, what happened with the banshee? Why did it just stop? Is it possible that did the book work? Was it a spell? Was it an incantation? Was it a prayer to God? But then you wouldn't need a special book to send a prayer to God. So it's like one of those movies that when it ends, you still have so many questions and it's not explained. You don't know the exact ending. What are your thoughts on the ending?
Yeah, it's pretty freaky. It sounds like the mother had experience, like she knew what that was. And I wonder if maybe in families that have experience, are they more open to that sort of thing? Do they experience more because, as a family, they've had encounters, or someone in the family is more open or whatever? And I suppose it could have been like exorcism rites or something like that as far as the book, although it does sound kind of not that's not the way that's not the impression I get when you read it, but I mean, it could be, I suppose.
Yeah, one more thing. When you said it may run in some families, I'm paraphrasing what you said. When I was interviewing a couple of years ago, Pastor Josh Robinson, who in the meantime came a few more times on the podcast, he's a pastor from West Virginia that was a part on that in that docuseries Dark Holler that has 5 episodes. So when they were making that documentary, Christine, the girl who was possessed, and on the day of her baptism, when the demon left her body, they're saying that there was a certain dark entity, like phantom-like spirit, that was following them. But it was revealing that it wasn't just following her. It would also follow people who came in her family before her. So that's something that I just want to add on what you just said. It seems like for whatever reason, it could be a certain sin or a sinful practice that is somehow being continued from generation to generation. Like in some rural places in the whole world, you'll have children, usually women children, being taught by their grandmas and then mothers certain magical practices. So if you're doing this, then you're bringing this open portal, open door in your life, that you're basically opening the door and say, hey, all these evil spirits and demons, just come and feel free to harass us. That's not what they're saying, but that's how it seems to these evil spirits.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it could have been if Christine in the Dark Holler docuseries, if she was haunted by this dark entity, the Shadow Man, the Phantom, and then people in her family generations before her. Well, here with the story of a banshee, just like you said, if Banshee was following this couple and the mother knew what was happening, that's what I just wanted to add on what you said. It seems to be that sometimes evil things, I don't want to use the word necessarily curses, but sinful, dark powers, maybe sometimes attached to a family, but it's not without nothing. You may be completely innocent. Maybe you don't want to even dwell with something. You're maybe 10th
Yeah.
generation, and you don't know what was happening 500 years in your family, unless there's a
Yeah.
story that was passed generation to generation, so you do know.
Yeah.
So I can only sympathize with people who are born, they're just minding their own business. They may not be looking to serve God, but they're like normal, regular, everyday people. They're trying to go to school, work, form families, and they see like spiritual attacks. And it's not because of them, it's because of someone maybe making a pact with Satan. And I'm not saying this is a controversy or as a conspiracy. I'm saying in a most literal way, when people do these things because they serve Satan to gain powers, right? So then you see the product of children's children being affected generations down that. And again, I can only sympathize because these are innocent people, and unless they turn to God, they won't get escape.
Yeah. I also wonder about the nationality of the mother and the family, because I feel like sometimes certain types of entities, or whatever you want to call them, are traced back to certain parts of the world versus others. So like, I don't know much about like a banshee, but for some reason I'm thinking Ireland, Scotland, the UK kind of history. So it's like, I wonder if it's just curious. I wonder if there's any element of, what would you call that? Ethnicity, or just family history, just kind of along the lines of what you just said.
I'm going to read the Google description of what is a banshee, but I just want to ask you something before I forget. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, that because it is, this is part of the Irish and Scottish folklore, right? But let's say someone down their line, generations before them, so their ancestors were practicing something. But let's say that was in Europe, and now their descendants live in the USA. Would you think, and I know this is a difficult question because we don't know, but would you think that certain spirits or regional principalities, powers, fallen Elohim, would be able, because there are theories and theologians who would say no, but there are those who would say, oh yeah, it is completely possible. But would you think they would be able to cross continents and countries to go and follow that descendant of a certain bloodline because like, hey, I made a pact with your great-great-grandma? Or would they be like vampires, they cannot cross waters, because of whatever? I know it's a difficult question, but I always wonder that, like, are those fallen gods, like let's say Zeus, Baal? But in this type, it's in this sense, in this context, Banshee is not even a deity; it will be a malevolent spirit. So I always wonder, like, because different theologians and researchers say different things. One would say yes, one would say no. So would they be able to cross continents to affect something, to like go and chase someone to hurt them, harm them, or maybe to spread their business, quote unquote, to spread their territory? What is your take on this?
I think it was Nahum in the Bible who wanted some of the dirt of Israel to take with him to worship. So when he went back to wherever it was he went back to, it might have been Babylon, or I forget the exact details of the story, but I remember that it had to do with cosmic geography in the sense of land. And so, that was an ancient Near Eastern belief. Whether or not that was reality or not, like that's kind of what they believed. So I wonder, I don't know if you can translate that to modern times, but if that's just a general reality, maybe there's something that they were tied to that came over with the family, maybe items, maybe it can be attached to an individual and then passed down. But that's a really interesting point you make, because if we frame this up as these types of entities are principalities and powers classified, that's more of a regional thing according to like divine council worldview theology. But maybe they're not either. Maybe they're just evil spirits that aren't powerful, quasi gods that control regions. Maybe it's just could be a dead human spirit even. I know that's a very controversial thing to say, but or some kind of witchcraft. Maybe it's not even a conscious entity. Maybe it's like a more of a power or like poltergeists. Poltergeists are more psychological, and it's one person that affects what the activity that's happening in a poltergeist home. It's not necessarily a autonomous entity. It's like more of a psychological phenomenon, some people think anyways. So yeah, like, I don't know, there's probably some research a guy could do on that. I don't really know what a banshee is. I feel like it's like a scorned woman or something.
Yeah, I'll read. It says a banshee is a female spirit from Irish and Scottish folklore whose piercing wail signals the impending death of a family member. These spirits are believed to serve specific noble families, appearing as various forms of women, from beautiful maidens to hag-like figures, and their cries serve as a mournful warning, not a malicious act. The banshee does not cause the death, but simply gives notice, allowing the family time to prepare for the loss. Well, I hope no one died then in this family and this story that we just read, because this story was written God knows how many years ago. I hope no one died.
Yeah. I mean, just back to the whole divine council thing. I mean, this is a good like example, I feel like, of Elohim, our spirit world dwellers. There are lots of different kinds of spirits, and within Christianity, like previously to than me learning about some of the divine council stuff, it was just demons, angels, and there were no human ghosts, and that's it, and God. That's like the classifications. But I've been convinced that there are many different types of spirits, and that have different powers and different reasons that they exist, which I feel like is why I had a friend of mine recently talk about doing, I think it was a Peter Greer, isn't he the alien researcher guy? And he's got a protocol for contacting aliens, supposedly. And she asked me, she's like, have you thought about doing that? And I'm like, no, I probably would not do that because you can't trust that whatever you're contacting is benevolent. And the chances are it's malevolent, in my mind. But that's not to say that there aren't benevolent. But I feel like if it was benevolent, it would be in line with God. And there's kind of like a principle throughout the Bible of spirits in the employ of Yahweh honor the boundaries that have been naturally set up in the world. So they honor the boundary between the spirit world and the physical world. They don't cross over unless they have God's permission. It's like the Watchers. They crossed over and they impregnated human women. It was the act of transgressing the boundary that was the sin or the problem, the utmost sin and problem. So I feel like a benevolent spirit would not do that on their own. They wouldn't respond to a protocol like that. So you're going to get the malevolent ones, at least according to biblical theology. To me, that's kind of the picture that it paints.
Yeah, I wanted to share this. I know it's funny, but it's true, because they would always want to, when I say they, I mean spirits, right? They would always want to, deceive others by portraying themselves to be neutral, to want to bring you peace and brotherhood, healing of the planet. They care about ecology. They care about so many things, but these guys, they're just the same fallen principalities. There's nothing new under the sun. So that's why I wanted to share this picture, because it's funny, but it's so true. Like, I don't believe you. You may try to look cute like that to people, but who you are in your inner self, I don't think that's how you look like. That's just one of your faces. So, yeah.
I think, highly likely. That's not that, like, I know people have positive experiences, especially like with family members. They feel like they can sense their family member that's passed away, or their pet, or things like that. So, like, I don't want to say that all experiences are demonic. I think that's oversimplifying, and actually it's not a good idea to do that. But yeah, I think you do have to be very careful, and it's nothing to mess around with. We weren't intended to cross those boundaries. So when we do, even like with drugs and things, like with DMT or ayahuasca, transparency, I microdose ayahuasca for different reasons. Like, I don't go on like a spiritual journey kind of ayahuasca, but I do take small little bits of it for mental health and other reasons to feel better. But you know, some of those drugs, if taken in the right amounts, can, like they say, it can like open up your third eye, if that's a thing that even exists. It's your pituitary gland, I think, up here. It basically opens up your mind to the spirit world. I'm not saying that's the reality. It could be, though. And people are experiencing all sorts of things when they go on these vision quests. I don't think it's a good idea. It's like, because we don't know anything about. That'd be like Flat Stanley trying to go into the three-dimensional world. Like, Flat Stanley's a piece of paper. He doesn't know about 3D. All the dangers that could pose, like, that's maybe a stupid analogy, but have you ever like looked into fourth dimension or multiple dimensions beyond our dimension? Like, it's some crazy stuff. There's so much we don't know. We can't even conceive of other dimensions if they exist. And I think the spirit world probably could be like the fourth dimension or some other higher dimension.
Yeah, I get lost when I read scientific explanations of that possibility. I'm like, I really want to understand, but I'm not able. I sometimes would see pictures that they would try to draw or explain, but I'm like, this is like high physics for me. I'm not that schooled in that area, but I want to understand more when it comes to quantum physics and mechanics.
But I don't think physics
These things are fascinating.
They are fascinating, but I mean, I don't think even science can explain it, right? It's like us trying to explain the Trinity. Like, we can try to explain the Trinity, but we're never going to really be able to understand 3 in 1. And I feel like that's the spirit world. Like, we can't understand the spirit world. And there are people who think they can, or lots of the occult tries to think they can and they can control it. But you get all sorts of mixed results with that and warnings that come with that. And I think, there's a reason for those warnings. And I think that applies to alien contact too, because I don't really think aliens are extraterrestrials in the sense of another world. I think they're extra dimensional creatures, and they're probably spiritual creatures. But anyways, that's my 2 cents.
For sure. This was like 10 cents that you and I added on this story. Okay, exactly. So the next story you'll be reading, I know it's a little bit lengthy one, but please don't read everything at once. Read, and whenever you need to take a break, or whenever you want to comment on something shocking, or there's a big plot twist, in the story, please, take a break so we can comment on that. But yeah, your story, the next story belongs to you.
Okay. My friends and I, who I will refer to as A, E, S, and D, if necessary, have been getting into paranormal investigations over the last few years. We aren't professionals by any means, nor do we claim to be. It's just something that we enjoy doing whenever we're all able to get together. We've gone to a few supposedly haunted locations and done some investigations, but nothing prepared us for what we experienced in this story. So one day we were discussing where we should go for our next paranormal investigation. We had just finished another investigation a couple of nights prior, so we were still feeling brave from that. As we were discussing where we should go, one of our friends suggested that we should check out this old abandoned school in rural Tennessee. We had heard stories about this school from videos on YouTube and from just online searches. If you know the story about the boy who was bullied to death and buried underneath the floorboards. Okay, sorry. The boy who was bullied to death and buried underneath the floorboards, then you'll know what school I'm referring to. If you don't know the story, then I'll give you a brief summary. A young boy was cornered in the boys' bathroom at this school by a bully. The bully beat him up so badly that he ended up succumbing to his injuries and died on the spot. The bully, in a panic, realizing that what he had just done, decided to pull up some of the floorboards with his pocket knife and stash the body underneath them. Because of how brutal it was said that something very dark and malevolent is said to haunt the school, as well as the boy. I assume that means the bully. So some speculate that this dark spirit is what drove the bully to take it too far and kill the boy. Wow. This is timely. You know why, right?
Yeah, let's not mention everything because I don't want to be, warned by
Controversial.
YouTube. But yeah, we know what happened 2 days ago. Was it 2 days ago or yesterday?
I think it was 2 days ago now. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 days ago. We can just mention the state. Was it Mississippi?
Minnesota, where I live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Minnesota. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But was it in Mississippi, the city?
No, Minneapolis.
Oh my gosh, I got
Yeah.
everything wrong. Okay,
That's
yeah.
okay.
So we won't mention the names. We won't mention any details people know, unless they're living under the rock. Yeah, we know what happened. And look at this story. Yeah, just like you said, such a timely story.
Well, the
Um,
one thing, and I'll just mention one thing, but I'll try to leave out, as many details as possible. But there was a
mhm,
manifesto with an image of him
mhm.
looking into the mirror, and the reflection was a demon. That was the manifesto of the individual that did this 2 days ago. And so I'm reading this and I'm thinking,
I
that
didn't know that detail.
yeah,
I heard about the manifesto. I didn't know the thing about the mirror reflection.
yeah, yeah, he's staring into the mirror with a gun on his back, and then staring back at him in the mirror is a demonic figure, and he drew this, as a part of his thing. So, to me, like, talking about, dark malevolent spirit that drove him to it. Um, anyways, I mean, this stuff happens, right? We know this stuff happens, but it's gets real when you see it happen in the real world, versus just a story. But anyways, more thoughts on that. Sorry, I didn't mean to crack open the controversy bucket. I do that. That's what I do. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Before you continue reading, I just want to say that there's one of the theories that people are talking from this area when this tragedy happened, where a bully attacked and killed the boy. So one of the theories is that this spirit, yes, could have prompted the boy killer to kill his boy. To kill this other boy. But the second theory is that this entity, after the tragedy happened, could have been drawn to school because of the tragedy. And this is why I believe in that theory. I mean, both theories could be true. It doesn't have to be either or. But this is why the second one also makes sense. In the last couple of years, I heard so many stories. I've interviewed people, and I've read with Sean different true horror stories that sometimes or many times when there is a tragedy, it doesn't have to be school. It can be in a family.
Mm,
Um, Demonic forces and evil spirits and demons, I don't know why, but they're drawn to tragedy, to misery, to depression,
mm,
to blood, to aggression, to violence, to injustice, and they're drawn to not just people who instill violence on others, but they're drawn also to people who are the victims because they come play with them. They want to, of course, they want to come and help them and comfort them. That's what God does, but they
yeah.
want to come and play with their emotions, with their mood, so that as they're growing up, they will become isolated, they will become lone wolves. This tragedy would form them, and they will become mentally unstable, and then they will be able to hurt someone. So whatever these demonic spirits and demons do, the fallen Elohim, the fallen gods, they're ancient. They're not dumb. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They're way smarter and experienced than us. So they're not doing just this just to have fun. For them, this is not like for us going to a movie, so we're having good time and then they forget. They're doing this strategically, like we're reading in C.S. Lewis Screwtape Letters, right? They're doing this strategically. So
Yeah.
I do believe that this is very, very possible. Wherever you have big tragedy, when there's
Mm,
like pain and suffering and sorrow and depression and blood and victims,
mm,
then that's drawn not just for it's not just God is drawn to that place to come and heal people and offer his comfort and help and send preachers and pastors and priests and regular people like me and you to go and hug people, love them, pray with them. But also the demonic forces are also drawn so they can use and abuse the victims. So
mm,
then they'll become maybe even worse than those who did them evil, who harmed them. So
mm.
I've read enough of this, of similar stories to recognize that there is a pattern behind this and that it's not impossible.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a cosmic geography tie in with that in any way, shape, or form? Like, so when we become believers, that we are like reclaiming the geography, the cosmic geography that was given over to the disgraced divine council members at Babel. And that's why you have the different religions and probably haunted areas and things. And when we become Christians, it's like reclaiming that geography in a sense. Cosmic geography, meaning, it's not east, west, north, south. It's spiritual world. But when something like this happens, it seems like what you're saying is that that's like ceding territory to the enemy. And what's really interesting about, boy, I won't get into it, but there's an interesting.
You don't have to, because this is only the second story with 47 minutes. So if you want to continue, maybe so we can save time.
All right, we'll just continue. I was just going to say that the place where it happened, it's interesting if you think about cosmic geography and ceding cosmic geography to the enemy versus claiming it. That's all I'll say. All right, now back to the story. Sadly, our friend A wasn't able to come with us on the investigation, so I invited another of my friends, who I'll refer to as H. H wasn't really into the paranormal like the rest of us are, but agreed to come anyways, just to hang out and have something to do. So we all got into our cars and drove to the school, hoping to have some paranormal experiences and maybe even capture some paranormal evidence that we could show off online. When we got to the school, we quickly realized that the pictures and videos we had seen online did not do the real thing justice. It was creepy. The entire place was covered in shrubbery, vines, and graffiti. The windows had been busted out and the doors were off their hinges, presumably from all the local kids looking to get a rush by breaking into and exploring the creepy abandoned school. We walked around the school and eventually found the entrance to the basement, which apparently you are not supposed to go into, especially the boiler room. Not just because the whole building was on the brink of collapse, but also because that's where it primarily lives. So, of course, that's one of the first places we wanted to go. We walked around the basement and did some exploring just to survey the area and to get a better idea of where we wanted to begin our investigation. We eventually did find the boiler room, and at first glance, it didn't seem like anything special. Just some broken down equipment, graffitied walls, trash thrown all over the place, and a random school chair sitting in the corner. E laughed and made the comment, "Must not be a very powerful spirit if this is where it has to live." We all let out a little chuckle in agreement and continued on our way through the basement. Thinking back now, that may not have been the best comment to make about this thing and its home. And we exited the basement and we went to the main area of the school. And the main area wasn't any better than the basement. The graffiti and trash was everywhere. The ceiling was falling in. The floor was collapsing. We explored the halls, some classrooms, and the gym, and we found the bathroom where the bullied boy was supposedly buried under the floorboards. After exploring for a little longer, we decided to start our investigation. We set up a couple of cameras, some motion sensors, some voice recorders. As we were doing our investigation, the three of us were in the classrooms while myself and another person were in the hall right outside. The three of us were in the classroom and we were playing around with some of the dowsing rods and spirit box. If you don't know what dowsing rods are, they're basically two copper rods that spin freely and are used as a way for spirits to communicate with you, either by crossing the rods or pointing. The spirit box is the device that quickly cycles through radio waves and allows spirits to talk through the frequencies. As we were asking their questions in the classroom, myself and H were staring down the hall. And at the end of this hall is what we assumed was a staircase, but we couldn't be too sure because we couldn't reach that area due to the floor having been collapsed. Myself and our friend were looking down this hall, and we heard a loud bang come from the far end where the staircase was. We quickly shined our lights in that direction, but we didn't see anything. We kept watching for a minute just in case someone or something would come out, but after a couple of minutes of nothing, we just assumed it was an animal or something. Eventually, I made my way to the classroom and with the others while H stayed in the hall. As we were asking our questions and hoping for a response through the dowsing rods or the spirit box, I noticed H in the hall. He was ghostly white and fixated on the area where we had heard the noise prior. I asked him what's wrong, to which he says, I don't want to freak you guys out, but I swear I just saw someone poke their head out from the corner and look right at me. We were all kind of like, oh, it's probably just your mind playing tricks on you. But he was still very insistent on what he saw. Now we had seen and heard things during our investigations before, but something about the way H looked at had us all a little spooked. H insisted that we should move on to another area, so we obliged him and went back to the main foyer where he had entered. We were standing there talking about where we should go next when we hear what sounded like a child's laugh coming from the classroom where we had just been. We all instinctively shut up and froze in place. Finally, our friend S broke the silence. What was that? Eventually, E built up the courage to go see what it was. He started making his way back to the classroom when something told me that it wasn't safe for him to go back there. I quickly grabbed his arm and said, I don't think that's a good idea, to which he brushed off and proceeded to head towards the classroom. A split second later, we heard a loud crunch and crash come from the room, so we all ran to see what it was. When we reached the classroom, we were horrified to see the floor had collapsed right where he had been standing moments later. Had something not told me that it wasn't safe, I would have...
Wait, you mean moments earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said moments later. So when he was standing moments earlier, yeah.
Yeah. When he reached the classroom, we were horrified to see the floor had collapsed right where he had been standing moments earlier. So, yeah, he had a premonition. I know people who have those. It's crazy.
By the way, have you ever heard of this spirit box? Do you know how it looks like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I actually interviewed, I know a lady who I interviewed on my podcast some years ago who used to practice this stuff. She's a New Age practitioner, and she actually knows the guy who makes the spirit boxes. George, forget his name, but so she has a relationship with this guy. So she came to Christ and got kind of out of that world, but she stayed in contact with this guy because like families get sick and stuff when you start getting involved in this stuff, like when you try to get out of it. So when you're in it, everything's fine. But like Danielle, when she tried to get out, some family members started getting sick. It's like it didn't want to let her go.
It's like being in a gang and trying to leave, like you may be killed.
That's exactly right. It's like being in a gang. And so then this George guy who makes these spirit boxes, he was having some issues too with his health and things, I think. And but I guess he stopped making them now. So you can't buy those from that guy anymore, but other people make them too. But anyways, yeah. And actually, yeah, so if you ever watch like Ghost Hunters or some of those ghost shows, they use them in those shows all the time to get an idea of what it is, you know, but yeah.
So basically, they would try to somehow use these spirit boxes to connect with radio frequencies and then turn on and see if there's voice coming back from a certain frequency. That's how I'm imagining it works, right?
And it's freaky. It's like,
do people ever get something in return?
Oh yeah.
Hear something?
Oh yeah. There's little blurbs of phrases, and they'll answer questions too. In fact, if you go to my podcast and you look up that interview, she gave me footage of the spirit box and responses she was getting. You can watch it.
Wow.
I included that in the interview. But like if you just watch Ghost Hunters, it happens all the time where they'll get responses and things. And it sounds kind of scratchy, and there's male voices and female voices. And in fact, when I was in Sedona, after I saw the green light, I was hearing all around the house, it sounded like voices coming from a spirit box. It was kind of scratchy like a radio.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really know, like, obviously if there's anything to it, but if you like listen to it and experience it, it does like answer questions. It tells you things that haven't happened yet, and then it happens.
That's almost like Ouija board. It's almost like Ouija board. It's like it should be dealt with.
Right. It's not something to mess around with at all. Nope, not at all. So anyways, yeah, so he had a premonition. The kid would have fell through the floor unless his friend saved him. So anyways, we stood there in shock of what happened, and we began to feel very grateful that the floor hadn't collapsed while we were standing there. We decided that was enough of the classrooms, and we made our way to the gym. The floors there felt safer. We continued our investigation, and thinking back now, we should have left after our friend almost died, but we were dumb and wanted to go on. I took the dowsing rods and began asking generic questions. Is anyone there? Can you tell us your name? Eventually, I asked the question, can you point to where you are? And to my surprise, the rods pointed in the direction of the darker corner of the gym. Big surprise. Guys, come here, I shouted. I'm getting responses. As my friends came closer, the rods began to move as well. Now they weren't pointing to the corner anymore. They were pointing to my friend E. Now might be a good time to mention that this is the same guy who almost fell through the floor. The guy who made the sly comment in the basement about the thing's home. So he insulted or provoked the spirit through his comments, evidently. I'm not saying that he was being targeted.
Reminds me of that ghost hunter who supposedly was mocking Annabelle and he died. This was recently a couple of months ago. You heard that?
I think I do remember hearing that. Like the real Annabelle doll? Yeah.
It's not fun. I don't even know why I'm laughing. Poor guy, but it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this stuff can be real, it's not anything to mess with. So the rods would follow this kid when he was walking around. The dowsing rods would follow him. And then when he left, they followed, and he went right. They followed. He ran around me. They followed in a circle. So it was creeping them out. And he asked why the rods were following him. And are you mad at him? And then in an instant, the rods went straight and unnaturally still, and the room fell quiet. So quiet, in fact, that it was as if we had felt deaf instantaneously. I got this insanely bad feeling as if something very evil had just entered the room. A few seconds later, I felt something physically grab the ends of the rods in my hands. Whatever was grabbing them began thrashing them back and forth with enough force to move my whole body, as if they were trying to break them from my grip. As this was happening, noises started coming from around the school. It sounded like the doors and lockers slamming, things being thrown down the halls and all around us, and screaming. Though admittedly the screaming may have been coming from us, but it didn't help our situation by any means. We were all terrified. We had never experienced anything like this before. Then the guy who saw the thing at the end of the hall pointed in the direction of the dark corner and let out a guttural, blood-curdling scream. We didn't even bother to look and see what he was pointing and screaming at. The only thing in our mind at this point was get out. And we all quickly grabbed our things and sprinted out of the school back to our cars. We got in and we peeled out as fast as we could. We met back at my place, and after a while, to process the experience, we asked what he had seen in the corner. He tells us that as everything was going on, he looked into the corner of the gym and saw something horrifying. He described seeing a massive thing, probably 7 feet tall, in the corner. It had unnaturally long arms that were spread out wide. Its head was long, devilish horns, and its mouth was open so wide that you could probably fit your head into it. He said on top of that, and on its unusually large mouth, was a smile more evil than you could ever imagine. Knowing that something like that was so close to us was bone-chilling. In my opinion, we were lucky to make it out alive. We've never returned to that school, and we have no intention of going back. As far as we're concerned, that old school is demolished and the rubble was burned. If that happened, they'd be doing the world a favor. Maybe it would destroy, or at the very least trap, the thing there for good. So believe what you not, it's forever burned in our minds. And that's pretty much the end of the story. So, and these are real accounts, right? On Reddit, you were saying. So that's pretty freaky. My daughter has seen a shadow person before, a tall shadow person in the hallway when she was little. And yeah, like, there you go.
I was Googling trying to find the best picture, and then I found this short video, which is obviously AI, but still I'm just trying to visualize something remotely similar that the kids saw in this school. So I have so many questions. I feel and believe, both biblically and listening and reading through people's experiences, including paranormal researchers, pastors, priests, that the same way certain gods, deities. I mean, even Yahweh gets his territory through spreading the gospel, right? So these fallen gods, these fallen Elohim, they, the more devotees they will get, the more fans, the more followers they will get. They will spread their territory, but by doing that, they will spread their power. Yahweh does not need to gain anything; he's already, perfect. He cannot, get something added or removed from him. But in this case, I feel like this demon that was drawn by the tragedy when the little boy was killed and buried, it kind of over time, it almost like I feel like became more powerful, because here we have a spiritual entity, a dark entity, a shadow man. There are gazillion stories of shadow people or shadow man, both singular and plural online, that you can read in different cultures, especially in the United States. So I feel like if the entity can feed off of your fear or energy, or even more evil events happening in the same area, it somehow grows. Not necessarily growing larger physically, but it's spreading its territory, it's spreading its influence, it's spreading its power. People are more involved in this. So this spirit was not your regular demon, because it was able to visualize, it was able to appear and disappear at different locations in this huge basement of the school, to even make this scary laughter that will go in and spook kids out. I mean, this paranormal crew that came to investigate. So we're not, I mean, again, just like you said a while ago, there's so many different entities both in the heavenly and demonic structure that we don't even know. We would just call everyone demonic or angelic, but that's so simplistic. So this entity, we can say it's a demonic entity, but it's not your regular demon that possesses people. This is something stronger, yet not as strong as, for example, Zeus or Baal or Thor, like your regional principalities that will be over countries and whole regions of the planet, right? So we would put Thor and Loki and Baal and Zeus, if they exist, but certainly some powers exist behind these names. We will put this in Deuteronomy 32 worldview. If you go to Deuteronomy 32 verses 8 and 9, these are the principalities. If you would read Psalm 82, these are the fallen principalities. But in this school, that's not that strong principality, but it still seems to be more powerful than your regular demon. So how do you call it? Where do you classify it? How can you depict it? We don't know. People usually call these entities, shadow people. They're usually very tall, very sinister. They give you creeps. The room usually becomes cold because these entities are feeding on drawing energy from your body and from the room. So I see here copy paste manifestation of what is happening through to so many people throughout generations and through so many cultures. They would just call these entities with different names, but it's basically if not the same, but a similar entity. The same, it could be even the same entity that we were talking about, Christine in West Virginia, that she was followed, that entity followed even her ancestors before she came to Christ. So there's so many hypotheses, so many theories, and we don't have all the answers. But what I do know is they eventually, this whole paranormal crew, when they were spooked, they finally left. And I'm so grateful that the first time when they thought to themselves, they had this gut feeling, hey, this is too scary, let's leave the school. But the boy who kept insulting the spirit, he kept going on. So I'm grateful that for the second time when they had this gut feeling, we have to leave now. I'm grateful that they listened to that voice. And maybe, who knows, it could have been God through his Holy Spirit warning people. Get out, or you don't know what you're getting with you. And in situations like this, I know stories of people who have experienced this hitchhiker effect. You go to infected, spiritually, demonically infected area, you come back home and something is attached to you. You don't know it immediately, but soon after that, your life is not the same. Your family starts seeing things, having nightmares. Things are being moved, dropping. People have to move out from these areas and try to locate somewhere further down, begging God to forgive them and to be set free from these demonic forces. So, I'm very curious by my nature, and maybe I will go to places like this. But when you hear stories like that, especially when something is attached to you, and if you have wife and kids, it's like you have to think 10 times before going and investigating, because you don't know what you can bring home unintentionally.
Yeah, I feel like in the real world, like I say real, in the physical world, you encounter all kinds of different people, and those people have all different kinds of capabilities and pathologies. You might know someone who's been to prison and they're just like a normal person who made a bad choice, or you might hear about somebody who's an absolute sociopath who you would hope they never know about your existence. And probably the same in the spirit world, right? I mean, there's probably different personalities and different strength levels, ones that are harder to get rid of, ones that are more powerful than others. It probably has something to do with an individual too, just just psychologically, what the things you're weak to, the things you're strong with, and might affect one person differently from the other. So I do think it's interesting how the shadow people are tall and the Nephilim were giants. And so that, in Jewish culture anyways, it's the dead spirits of it's the dead spirits of the Nephilim that are technically the demons, at least according to the ancient, Jews, and probably maybe, I feel like they maybe picked that up in Persia. But anyways, the fact that the shadow people are so tall kind of makes me think there might be a relation there, but that's just speculation. Obviously, like most of this stuff is speculation, so it's like subjective experience. But I feel like we have to take it seriously to a point, because I've experienced things. We both know of people who've experienced things. I don't know if you've experienced anything, but there's definitely something real going on, whether it's psychological or spiritual. But stuff's happening. It's something. It's something, and it's not something to ignore. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just recently, I don't know if it was a part of the book review, but I was reading something when a pastor was either talking about his experience or the experience of other pastors, how like so many pastors get asked questions like, hey, what do you think about spiritual warfare? What do you think about exorcism? Do you think this is real? And not every pastor or priest is equipped theologically, spiritually, or practically how to deal with these topics. Not even how to exorcise the demons, but even to talk about these things. So if I would try to put myself for 5 minutes in the shoes of a priest or a pastor, you can't laugh at these things, even if people just imagine things, because it's seriously haunting them. They're traumatized. They're going through something. And even more if it's not just them, even more if their family members or a friend who went with them was also affected. Now you have more than one people who were traumatized and who has experienced the same thing. Now you have to take things seriously, even if you didn't. But you're now in position of a church where people come to help. I mean, to ask you for help. They're asking you for prayer, for guidance, for counseling. The last thing you should be brushing off and call it a nonsense, or you need medication. Maybe they do, but you have to listen to them. Even if you don't have answers, that's part of the healing. They need someone to listen. Sean and I covered so many stories, and I interviewed some of the book authors who've been gathering, supernatural experiences, both Christians and non-Christians. And a lot of them have to say that many people who are dealing with the demonic, they, for some reason, well, not for some reason, for the reason of ridicule, they cannot share their experiences because of what will their coworkers, their families, or even church friends tell to them. So many of them who witness Mothman, demons, shadow figures, whatever, call it whatever you want to, they're afraid to share with others because they're like, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose credibility, and they stay silent, and that bothers them to the point when they're like, they want to explode. It brings even depression to their life. So the last thing, if you're a pastor or a priest, please, if you're in a high position in a church and someone comes to you and tells you their story, please do not laugh at them. Even if it's not true, do not laugh at them. They need someone who will be listening and be their friend, because they're not able to share their testimony, that story with just anyone. So be privileged and feel honored that they came to you. So listen to them, please. Do you want to end something on this story, or you want me to continue?
Yeah, I agree. And actually with so many things, just with the human condition, I feel that um, a lot of the reason the church hasn't been effective is because it has dismissed um, a lot of people that needed help, the kind of help that isn't, usual. And whether that's mental health issues, huge stigma around mental health issues in the church, huge stigma around certain kinds of sins, huge stigma around. And I'm not saying that we affirm these things. I feel like that's the mistake the progressive church has made, is affirming as a way of dealing with it. But you also don't isolate and reject, and that this goes for the paranormal too, and the alien stuff. Like that's a big thing too. Is people want answers, and if you're so stuck in your little theology box as a minister that you can't open your mind up to realize, because it's no different than the Heiser stuff. When I first encountered the Heiser stuff, red flags are going up all over the place for me. I'm like, ooh, cautious, because I came from a Protestant Baptist kind of background. You too, Moody Bible Institute, I feel like is in that vein as well. Nothing, Moody's great, nothing bad about Moody, but those communities tend to produce a certain mindset that Heiser was sort of, controversial towards, or they were controversial towards Heiser. And but I soon realized that there's a lot that we don't know, and you have to have an open mind. Also, just going through seminary too, or even college, I think Christians need to be more open-minded, to not to the point where you're saying sin is good and you're celebrating sin. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying be open-minded to the fact that there's different realities for people. And it's not your job to try to put people in a box. It's your job to try to understand what's happening, to engage with prayer, to be there for the person, and, try to understand what they're going through. So I think that was a good thing for you to say to pastors about listening. That was good.
Occasionally I have my moments, but they don't come very often, once every few years. So I hope the fans of the podcast wouldn't get too excited about this, because we'll wait for the next moment like that. So I'll read two next stories because they're short and you read a long one. And this one has only 3 short paragraphs. I travel a lot for my job, and some coworkers of mine were driving from New Mexico to Houston in the middle of the night, which is always a good idea, right? The driver and the passenger in the front seat were the only ones awake at the time. The passenger I have talked to a few times about the paranormal, and he has had several experiences that were quite frightening. The driver I have known for a good while and is a very reliable source. So at the time they're driving down some isolated highway that is completely empty of other traffic, all of a sudden they see something very large flying towards them. Man, this is so much Jeepers Creepers. It's
You're talking about
already
Jeepers Creepers, the actual movie?
yeah. Especially the second one, when the road trip is taken by that school bus, and the Jeepers Creepers is after them because it's sniffing whose part of the body wants to eat and regrowing his own body, right? So it's like,
Right.
hey, this entity is after you, and it's not a coincidence. So yeah, so they're on a highway, and something very large is flying towards them. It looked like a large bird with a wingspan of around 8 feet. Oh, no biggie, only 8 feet. Wider than the van they were in. I feel like they were driving that Scooby-Doo van, Mystery Machine, or whatever it's called. So
What's that, Scoob?
yeah,
What?
yeah, and then that's the answer. They solved the mystery. So it looked like a large bird with a wingspan of around 8 feet. The strangest part was that it had a human-like face and long black hair. I mean, dude, this is so much Jeepers Creepers. It flew
Mhm.
right over the van. The passenger said, "We're not going to talk about it." It's like no one would
We're
believe
not going to
us.
talk about that. Mhm.
Yeah, especially if imagine you see a police car and you stop and say, "Sir, we just saw Jeepers Creepers and it's after us," and they're like, "Okay, can we test you for any DUIs or like alcohol or any?" And they're like, "No, we're good, sir." So it's like this thing can come up unless you live a very clean life. This thing can come up with a very bad ending for your reputation unless you're sure what you're talking about and unless you're very clean. Otherwise, it can be like you can be like a point of laughter to your friends or others. So I understand for them to trying to be guarded, but also on the other side, if I will witness something like this, there's no way I'll be silent. I'll be telling my friends and I'm like, hey, look what I've seen, and it wasn't just me, it was my friends with me in the car.
Hmm.
So it says, to this day, our friend refuses to talk about this. I heard the story from the driver, but I had never heard anything like that coming from him. I asked him if they could have been mistaken and it could have been a vulture. That's about the largest bird in the area, but he said it was definitely not a bird. And that's the whole story. So
Hmm.
when I was interviewing Tobias, I forgot his last name, but it starts with W. He's a local Chicago, Illinois paranormal researcher, and a lot of the stories that he gets from people here in the whole Lake Michigan area are, believe it or not, about Mothman. So Mothman in the past will be always related to West Virginia, but starting with the last couple of decades, people in the broader Chicagoland area, including Michigan, Indiana, they've been witnessing something similar to Mothman. I even read the book that this guy compiled by interviewing so many people, and so many people witnessing the same thing. Like, oh, we saw a creature that was 6 or 7 foot tall. It was larger than a bird. It wasn't like a prank that people would put a costume on a drone and they would see that. People will witness how they would feel, how it would affect them with sleeping, with not having nightmares, having goosebumps, all of these things. And the good thing that I remember Tobias including in his book is that according to the research, if you saw Mothman or something similar like that once in your life, there's a big chance you will never witness again. So that's a good thing for people who went through trauma. Sometimes people would be jogging, coming back from work, walking the dog, and they would see a similar huge, um, entity that would resemble the head would be almost like human or human and something else, but the body would be of a bat, huge bat, like 6 or 7 foot tall. And they're trying to do scientific um, di- to dissect this type of a body scientifically, and they say, well, this entity shouldn't be even able to fly because that entity should have a wingspan that will be much bigger than their body, but it doesn't have. So it's like, how is it even able to fly? And I'm like, hey, you don't know. I'm not a person of science. I know even less. And we're talking about a number of accounts, not 2, 3, 5, 10. We're talking about dozens and dozens of witness accounts who saying like, I don't know what I saw. I'm not saying it's Mothman, but it's how it looks like. And they would compare with so many testimonies, like it would match so many times. So I just want to say how that type of testimony, when it comes to Mothman, resembles this. Some people say it's a thunderbird because this will come from Native Americans. Some people may call it with a completely different name. But the thing is, the description fits, right? So what they've been reading here, you can call it Mothman, you can call it Jeepers Creepers. Again, I said as a joke, but it's true. This is something that it does look like that. And thankfully, unlike Jeepers Creepers in the Mothman stories, I don't know that anyone ever died, neither in Chicago or the whole, Lake Michigan area, nor in West Virginia. So then people will be like questioning, well, then what is the role that Mothman plays? Is it just to warn people, like someone would think, like just when the bridge collapsed, in West Virginia? Was it to bring bad luck or bad omen? Like, what would be the role? And people are still like debating and discussing, because it's not like an angel sent by God or a prophet come to warn you, because these are good beings, good good creatures. Mothman looks horrible to the point like you will never have normal sleep, and you will never you always like turn your head around if you're walking late at night. Like it doesn't give you that feeling. I don't want to use the word vibe because it's so new ages, but that's the type of feeling that you wouldn't get. It doesn't bring you pleasure or a blessing. It's like, dude, just leave me alone. People are freaking out. So again, I don't know what to think about this except that like it was a Mothman-ish type of a creature. Thankfully, it left them alone, but they obviously witnessed something to the point where the first guy was so traumatized. He was like, I'm not talking about this, because also what I heard from different researchers that like so many people want to stay anonymous when they're giving us eyewitness accounts and reports and stories because they're afraid not to be left at their work or their churches or their families or neighborhoods, whatever. So what do you think about this? It's very cool.
Well, and if it's an omen in Chicago, so much bad stuff happens every day. Like, how would you know? I was kind of joking, but not joking.
It's a joke, but it's not a joke because it's real. Yeah.
Yeah, like they call it Chirac for a reason, right? So, but no, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I said before, with all the accounts of this, like something's got to be happening, and there's got to be like an explanation for it. I mean, this is what they always say, right? So I'm not saying anything profound, but I just wouldn't be able to dismiss it either because of all of the different people. I mean, they can't all be lying. They can't all be making things up, especially when things match so much. And I mean, I know there's phenomena like hysteria. I don't know if you've heard of like episodes in history where
mass hysteria
episodes where people have like all start acting crazy. Maybe there's a psychological component, like, you know, one person sees something, someone runs an article of it. Now you have other people, you know, they also say that, you know, like with these violent things that are happening, when one event happens that's violent, you get copycats then that happen. You know, if one person commits suicide off a bridge, the cops go and station someone there for a week or two because other people start showing up. There's a certain psychological component of when things happen like this, it embeds itself into the psyche of the general public. And if you're a certain type of person, you can be susceptible to then seeing something. So I don't discount that could be part of it, but it seems too much of a leap to me to say that that's all of it and in every case, you know? Like, I feel like it's same with everything. Bigfoot, ghosts, like all of it. Mothman, like it's all of it. I think there's a psychological aspect, and then there's also like a real sort of, they're seeing something aspect of this. Not all of it, but there's got to be, because it's too much, it's too many, and it's too much of the same, you know? But I haven't researched it in depth either. Probably the thing I would probably research in depth would be like alien abductions and stuff. That's probably the direction I would go, because it seems like Christians probably need to be more literate in that area based on what we see being pushed from the, you know, the media and some of the governments and things with regards to the reality of aliens and sort of what they might be trying to get us to believe propaganda wise, and what the implications on theology could be if something like that were to be, you know, made real, or if it would happen, you know, alien discovery. I feel that it could wreck a lot of people's faith. So, but that's true of all this stuff. That's true of all these experiences. That goes back to your point earlier about listening to people. All of this stuff has the potential to wreck people's faith or enhance it based on, you know, if they have someone who listens to them, and also how they make sense of it in the grand scheme of things, which I think is why the Divine Council worldview does a lot to explain why these things might be happening, more so than any sort of explanation that I've gotten from within the church before.
Yeah, I just want to say I watched this movie a few days ago. It's not like the best movie ever. It's like a B production. You don't have big budget, but it's a decent movie where this guy, I don't want to reveal too much for people who want to watch the movie. I don't recommend, nor do I not recommend the movie. It's like whatever. It didn't get good reviews. It got like 5 out of 10, but on Rotten Tomatoes, as we see, it got much better than on IMDb. But anyway, this guy, he's waiting for his wife to deliver the first baby. He's working as a school security / maintenance, and one day, even though he's out, he's not working, his shift is over, but he gets a message from the principal to go and deal with the flickering light and the bulb that is out and not working, and the alarm, and the storm is coming, and he climbs on a garage with the huge ladder. He climbs there to change, and then he sees lights in the sky approaching. And then he wakes up. He's in the hospital. His wife is there concerned. She said, "You've been sleeping for 2 days. You fell from the garage. His head is all wrapped." And she told him, "You can never do this again. Let someone else do the job." But in those 2 days, he was actually put in a room. He saw aliens putting probes and needles in his body, and then he witnessed seeing his dad laying by him, even though his dad died long ago. So until the last moment, you basically don't know, what is true, what is not, because after that, the movie, develops in the way that he doesn't know what is true, what is not after that experience. But the thing is that this thing, let's say hypothetically, they happen. Again, we're going back to what you're saying, who or what are aliens. They're not extraterrestrial beings, they're interdimensional spiritual beings. They can camouflage themselves to look gray, to look green, or to look like Bigfoot, to look like whatever, Mothman, Dogman. But the thing is, like, all of them, and I know I'm generalizing and saying all, but all of them, because they don't serve God, they work for the dark side. They have different roles, they have different shapes, they have different names, they have different parts of this demonic structure of their army. But none of them is like, none of them can be compared to, God's family. I'm not just even talking about angels. Let's talk about cherubim. Let's talk about seraphim. Let's talk about archangels. Let's talk about any entity that it could be, like guardian angel. Like God would send for a good purpose, because these entities, they don't do that. So I just wanted to share that because I just watched this movie, like I said, a few days ago. I wasn't very impressed. I'm still not sad or upset that I watched it. It was a decent movie, but it deals with that. It deals with that. The second movie that I was watching, let me just it's not the same, but it's similar, and it's even better movie. It's this one, Hollow Road. And I would like you, if you can watch that movie whenever, and then if we can talk about the ending, because it's a better movie. Okay. And again, until the last moment, and even when the movie is over, I don't know if you would know what's happening, because just like the previous movie, it can be interpreted in at least 2 different ways, but it's a better movie than the previous one. And even if I can put it, scarier and more mysterious. But here, and I don't want to spoil it, here we're also dealing with something that is more than simply psychological and mysterious or human origin. But what is on the other side? What is there? What is there that will be attacking people or being vengeful or being territorial? Because just as I was interviewing one missionary who's been a missionary to Cambodia, he's an American, but he goes every year to Cambodia with his wife for several months. He told me, because he experienced demonic powers and powers of this fallen Elohim firsthand, he told me, listen, what Dr. Heiser is writing, I've experienced this. I know it's true. He told me that all these principalities, powers, authorities, dominions, they're very territorial. He taught me this. He said they're territorial just like animals. And I never forget what he told me when he told me this and gave me comparison. So how many entities are there guarding their, their, let's say, their given forest or a lake or a mountain or a whole country? Given by whom? Was it by God? Did they fall? Did they all rebel? Like Sean and I talk about these things on the podcast very often. Many times we don't know the answer. Like what if sometimes there's not a fallen Elohim or a spiritual being, but it's still put there by God to protect the forest or this or that by people who would abuse, maybe overkill animals or kill, people would kill each other. So what if there are like certain spirits? They're not evil, maybe they're not bad. I mean, maybe they're not super good either. But let's say they're neutral, if anyone can be neutral, and their job is to be a guardian. Like, hey, this is your post from point A to point B. You're supposed to protect it, preserve the life, preserve the nature, and hey, if anyone comes to abuse it, just deal with that. Hypothetically, again,
precedent for that in the Old Testament too.
So I do think just the same way that principalities can cover and be in charge of the whole nations or even continents, I do believe that there are these smaller entities with smaller power. They're not demons, they're not angels, they're not fallen Elohim gods, but they do have role in preserving or being territorial beings. Now, are they always bad? No. Are they always good? No. I mean, we can't generalize. But that's why I recommended these two movies, because it's not just dealing with aliens or abductions, but it also has to do with spiritual world and spiritual realm behind it. Why do they behave a certain way? Are they guardians? Are they over aggressive in their way to preserve the nature of the area given to them? It's like a lot of questions come from movies like this, and I don't think that a lot of these movies are mere fiction, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you know what they say about predictive programming in TV and movies, as well as just art in general, is that it mirrors spiritual realities, or that it, some of this stuff is sympathetic magic too, where they need to show the general public what they're planning to do, or if they're planning to do some kind of ritual or open some kind of portal, they have to publicize that to people as part of the process of sympathetic magic. It's part of what makes it more powerful and makes it, in their eyes, effective when they actually do the actual ritual. If they have a movie that portrays what they're trying to do, could be that, could be just, also I just wonder, like, you think about the ancients and how the spirit world, like the Watchers, or in the, what was it, in the Mesopotamian stories, it was the Apkallu who came, and they had different specialties. Some taught metallurgy, some taught spells, some taught warfare. The spiritual beings had their own special things that they taught to people. And like, why would that stop? I mean, if you're a movie producer, where did you get your ideas from? From the spirit world? Are you into the occult? Did you get these ideas from reading, or did you get it like transmitted to you spiritually? Maybe some of that's happening too. I don't know.
Okay, cool. That was a really good discussion. Okay, this is story number 4, and it's another short one. This happened to me back in 2009. It was around 2:30 in the morning, and this is what people are calling throughout so many cultures as the witching hour, especially 2 and 3 in the morning, where supposedly the door to the supernatural is open, and there is like this transfer of powers and entities between supposedly our realm and their realm, and where they come and mostly do bad things to people. That's again according to the folklore of so many nations. So it was around 2:30 a.m. and I was on my drive back home from the movie theater. I had just turned onto the main road that runs by my subdivision. I noticed a man and a woman on the side of the road facing the direction I was driving. But as I got closer, I noticed they weren't moving. They were not moving at all. They were just completely frozen mid-stride. Their appearance was weird as well. First off, I could detect no color or anything. Not their skin, not their clothes, not the stroller. But the scariest thing of all is that when I looked at them as I drove by slowly, I couldn't see any facial features, just darkness. I guess the lack of color and no facial features could be due to shadows, but it doesn't explain why they were still frozen. And no, I do not suffer from any mental illness that would cause hallucinations, nor do I do drugs. I was so unnerved that during the rest of the drive home, I was afraid to look in the rearview mirror for fear that I would see them in the back seat. Man, I would feel the same. That's how badly I messed up with my brain. Thankfully, it hasn't happened again and never will. So it's a short but creepy story. It's like it's almost like you're witnessing a glitch in the matrix. I'm not saying I believe in matrix, but that's how it almost sounds like these people are not supposed to be there. Are they frozen? Are they from another dimension? Are they from another parallel universe? Again, I don't believe in that. I'm just right, just different hypotheses, different theories. Like what would
Yeah.
cause these people, if they're even people, they may just have a form of humanoid creatures. What would cause them to be frozen and not move, not have normal like color in their tone? Would it mean that they didn't feed, so they don't have normal color? They didn't finish metamorphosing and transferring into a human-like creature. That movie from like 30, 40 years ago, They Live. If you put
Yeah.
special type of glasses, you can see who is the real person, human person versus a reptilian or alien living. So it's almost
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It's like these people are not people. Like they seem to be alien type, reptilian, whatever shadow man creatures that are there's a glitch in their performance. They still didn't get unstuck, or they didn't finish transforming, metamorphing into something that will look like more like humans. That's the best explanation I can give if this story is true. What do you think about this?
First thing I thought of was those street performers that they stay perfectly still and you can walk right up to them and they don't even budge. Like it reminded me of that. So from a skeptical point of view, maybe it was like a street performer out there.
2, 3 in the morning, a man and a woman not moving for a long time.
You got to practice sometime.
I'll practice home 2, 3 in the morning instead of risking being killed. I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy though. That's nuts.
Okay, so we have 3 more stories. Do you want to continue with the next one, please? The one that starts
Sure.
with this story takes place at a campground.
Okay, this story takes place at a campground where myself and others have had strange experiences, but those stories are for another time. When I was around 12 years old, I accompanied my father to our family's longtime campground where he was going to perform some lawn care work before camping season began later that month. We were probably going to be there for a while, so I asked my dad if I could invite my friend to come with us to keep me entertained while he finished up some mowing. To my delight, my dad agreed and said my friend could come. My friend and I had been friends for years and had many of the same interests. Among those common interests was our curiosity for the unknown and paranormal. So while my dad was busy mowing, I suggested that we should try to do some EVP recordings in the cafeteria just to see if we capture anything. The cafeteria was a 2-story cement building, with the upstairs being where the kitchen and dining hall were, and the basement, otherwise known as the dungeon, was an old dorm that had been mostly used for storage, with a very big and dimly lit storage room, a long hall, a smaller storage room, and a rather large bathroom. The whole atmosphere down there was always giving me the creeps. Myself and my friend made our way into the dining hall and sat down at one of the tables, and we got out my flip phone and started to use a voice recording app to see if we could catch anything. Turns out we took turns asking questions and waited for responses for about 5 minutes, and we didn't hear anything until we heard some noises coming from the dungeon. We discussed going down there to see what the noise was, but we chalked it up as an animal since it wasn't very uncommon for animals to get into the buildings at this campground. So for the most part, we just brushed it off. We continued with our makeshift EVP session for about another 5 minutes until we heard another noise coming from the dungeon, but this time we froze in place. We looked at each other in shock and what we were hearing, and my friend says, "Is that chanting?" At this point, we were both freaked out and decided to exit the cafeteria and just go on a walk. As we were walking, we speculated about the sounds we heard, and I did my best to come to the logical explanation to what we were hearing. I mean, there was no way that there was people down there. We would have seen or heard something beforehand, right? As we continued our walk, we ended up about 60 yards from the back side of the cafeteria, where we could see a door with a window that led to the dungeon. We both looked at the door and didn't see anything weird, so we kept walking. I made a mistake of saying to my friend, how scary would it be if we looked at the door and saw someone looking back? And I was just joking. Immediately after saying this, we looked back at the door, fully expecting nothing to be there. But to our horror, something was there. Not just something, though, but there were multiple people. I froze in place, terrified of what I was seeing. There were 3 people that we could see, and they appeared to be in cloaks, one in a red cloak and 2 in black on either side, staring directly back at us. One of the scarier parts was that I never even saw their faces, just the hoods that they were wearing. Before I could... Jawas. Oh, Jawas, you can see the eyes. Okay, bad joke. Before I could even ask my friend if he was seeing what I was seeing, I looked to see him in the full sprint down the road, about 50 yards in front of me, so I instinctively started running too. We ran to tell my dad what we had heard and seen, to which he pretty much brushed off and said that he would go check it out. Now, my dad was not a man to be messed with. He was 6'5" and a cop and almost 300 pounds. So just his sheer size would have been enough to intimidate or scare anyone off if they were trespassing. My dad went and checked out the dungeon as we watched from a distance. He came back out saying everything was fine. He didn't hear or see anyone, and we were still a little freaked out, but glad that he said there was nothing to worry about. So we continued on our day until it was time to leave, but we still steered clear of the cafeteria. Flash forward about 8 years, and I had mostly forgotten about the whole thing. One night, my older brother, who is older than me by about 7 years, and I were up late, sitting on our parents' back deck, just reminiscing about the times we had grown up. We eventually got talking about spooky stuff and what had happened to us that brought us to talking about our experiences at the campgrounds. I proceeded to tell my brother the story about me and my friend, and seeing the people in the cloaks in the dungeon, and my brother gets very perplexed and somewhat scared, and he says to me, "You're joking." To which I said, "I'm not. You can ask my friend and he'll tell you the same thing." My brother, getting more and more freaked out by the story I'm telling him, he proceeds to tell me something that has been haunting me to this day. He tells me that when I was about 2 years old, a satanic cult had broken into the campground. The cultists had gone through every dorm and the church, gathering up all the Bibles, and taken them to the field, which was directly on the other side of the road from where myself and my friend had seen the people in the window. He tells me that they had burned a massive pentagram into the field, piled all the Bibles in the middle, and set them on fire. The next day, a couple workers had gone out to the campgrounds to do some regular maintenance and found what had been done. They called the police, and according to my brother, they not only found a pile of burned Bibles inside of this massive pentagram, but they also found the remains of dead animals all around it in ritualistic patterns. Nobody had heard or seen anything more about the cult since then, until I told my dad and brother what my friend and I had experienced. Flash forward to today, so 11 years since what we experienced, and nobody has heard or seen anything else that we know of. So did my friend and I just imagine what we experienced? Did we interrupt another cult gathering? After hearing what my brother told me and comparing it, we find it hard to believe in anything other than the latter, that it was another cult gathering. So that's interesting.
I wanted to share Javas because you're mentioning them as a joke.
Yeah. So were they Jawas or Satanists? Or are
maybe
Satan?
Both, but way bigger and way more mysterious, and you wouldn't be even able to see their eyes. So I don't think there was something supernatural. Well, I mean, behind every satanic cult, if you're worshiping Satan, there must be something supernatural. But I'm saying that I do believe that these were merely human beings, right? Just trying to hide themselves and do their, ritualistic satanic BS. But I will dare even to say this. Based on so many movies and stories like this, if you live in a smaller town or smaller city, and there is a group of cultists or Satanists gathering frequently, there's a big chance that you know some of them, but you're not aware. Because it's like a secret society. They may be smiling, they may be dressing nice, they may be polite, they may be even giving charities, maybe even sharing your church pew with you. You don't know them. you don't know them who truly they are, but on
Mhm.
the other side, this is who they truly are. You just can't recognize them because they're wearing cloaks and hiding in the dungeon under the ground. But I believe this happens. Like, I mean, I mean, how many rural places of America, in national parks, in places where it's just forest and like no one lives, people gather there for different cultic rituals, or they're like psychotic people who want to hurt, injure other people, serial killers, things like this happen. Like, it's usually in
Mhm.
secluded places so that
Mhm.
they wouldn't be noticed. So that's why I'm saying, I would dare to say, if this was in a smaller place, there's a big chance that these guys actually knew some of the people who were in that satanic cult, who were sacrificing
Mhm.
animals and burning the Bibles, but because they're all covered with cloaks, you wouldn't be able to recognize them, to tell, oh yeah, I know this man, or I
Mhm.
know this woman,
Mhm.
because this could be coming from any part of society, any part of um, structure, any part of that layer of society, where it could be your professor, it could be your next door neighbor, it could be your pastor, it could be anyone. And now I know I'm getting too much, like pastor, maybe not pastor, but it could be anyone. You just don't know. You just don't
Yeah.
know. I heard this
Yeah.
from people who've been dealing with New Age, who've been researching. Some of them could be former Satanists or former New Agers, but now serving Christ. I
Yeah.
heard from these people, not from me. I didn't invent this. Then in many churches, they're intentionally placed witches and people like warlocks who are dressed normally. They may raise their hands, sing, pray supposedly, but they're actually there to be spies for the other side and actually bring division in the church and cause trouble. It could be
Yeah.
also bringing weird doctrines. It could be through gossip. God knows through how many of those tools that they will be using to destroy churches. So when
Mhm.
you put everything together, you're like, man, again, satanic structure is very well organized. And
Yeah.
Jesus speaks about this. If Satan goes against Satan, his kingdom will be destroyed. But it's thriving, and it is because things like this happen, and we're not even aware of this. If I would be watching this in a movie, I'll be like, oh, it's just a movie. But again,
Yeah.
these things happen.
Yeah. Well, and proof that it's happening is, you probably heard of Fern and Audrey. They're they're counselors. Heiser interviewed them at some point. I think it was on his Fringe Pop 321 YouTube channel. And they specifically deal with satanic ritual abuse survivors. And so they can tell you, like, specifically people, they're not going to tell you who, because that's you know it's illegal for counselors to do that, and immoral, obviously. But their program is specifically designed to treat trauma survivors of that specific kind of trauma. um so to me it's like, well, either they're making it up, which is highly unlikely, because there are certain things a person who's been through trauma exhibits that you can't fake. um but to me, that's like proof in the pudding. It's like the insurance companies, post COVID, saying all of the insurance cases have gone sky high with people with injuries and stuff. You know, proof in the pudding. Like, that's the back end of all this stuff. We can say all day long, like, there's people in cloaks in the basement, and people might believe us or not. But when you've got actual people who are being hurt, children who are being raised up in this. I don't know if you've seen, there's some stories on YouTube, and it's hard, some of this stuff is kind of hard because it's subjective, but if they're going to a therapist and a therapist is vouching for them, people talking about growing up in satanic cults or satanic families and stuff, where they witnessed other children. They were children themselves, but forget the lady's name, but she witnessed other children being abused and even killed. um, you can look up these testimonies. Like, there's been books written on it, and some of it is a little fake. It's a little bit like, okay, maybe they're making it up, but other ones are very believable, and like, they seem to be backed up by professionals who have treated these people and stuff. So To your point about it actually happening, I think it is.
Yeah. Okay, we have a couple of stories left. I'll try to be fast.
Okay.
When I was a teenager, I moved into my father's home for the first time in California. I had some paranormal experiences in this house. My stepmother would always say that her deceased father was around and would mess with things whenever my father and her got into an argument, like misplacing his things during the night so he would be late for work the day after. Seems like this, if this is true, that the ghost of the dead grandpa would be trying to protect his daughter, and he wouldn't be trying to cause chaos, but he would be like, there, I still love my daughter, so I'm trying to protect her if her husband, my son-in-law, is messing up with her. I never really believed these stories, as I wouldn't put it past her to hide his things herself. But my stepmother and I would often talk about the paranormal and ghosts. We didn't come from a religious family or anything, so it was always a very open discussion. One house, our house, was right next to a cemetery. That's always fun. Why people build houses to cemeteries, I will never understand this.
Literally in Shakopee, there's a prison, an elementary school, and a cemetery all right by each other.
Oh, like paradise. Nice.
Like why? Yeah.
Yeah. Our house was right next to a cemetery on the other side of our fence. I was 16 and I loved listening to scary stories on YouTube while painting, doing homework, and similar. My stepmother and I had talked about Ouija boards, and since I was, I guess, edgy teenager, I bought one. That's never smart. I spoke to my friends about it, and they were all very intrigued about the idea of trying it. Not very smart either. But I know when I was a kid, my sister and I, friends, relatives, we were all like kids, like turn off the lights, light the candles. We would draw something on a paper, and then you have a needle, and you're inviting spirits to move the needle, and by moving the needle, they will tell you something. So I remember doing this as a kid. And when you're a kid, you're just simply stupid and too curious. So it's like we were all like that, like this. I think there's part of our DNA as human species. Like we're all super. First thing, we're very curious, but second thing, we're all deeply spiritual and religious, even if we don't want to acknowledge it. But it's in all of us to want to communicate with the other side. Too bad we don't recognize that that's actually our cry for God. So the first time we tried playing with the Ouija board was the Halloween night at a cemetery next to my house. The security was amped up this night, so my three friends and I found a large tombstone to hide behind to play, so we wouldn't be seen from the road. Absolutely nothing happened this night, which gave me this kind of ego about the whole story. The second time I tried, it was also my last time. Once again, it was a group effort with my two friends, both with the same name, which can be kind of confusing, so I will call them C and R. We did more of an quote-unquote official seance, and did a quick Google search how to find beforehand. We lit candles and planned to have me and my friend R holding the planchette, which is a plain metal disc from which a coin is made, with the blindfolds on, so that my friend C could read our potential responses. We asked a few questions with no response, but suddenly the planchette moved around. I had assumed that R and C were just trying to fool me, so I wasn't scared or believing it completely. We asked for the entity's name, and I can't for the life of me remember it. But it sounded like an old Hebrew name. We got bored eventually after a few more boring responses and said goodbye to the whole thing. After this time of playing with the board, things started to happen in our home. No wonder. It started out so small I don't even remember much of the stuff in the beginning or a chronological timeline of events. I started waking up, I started waking up in the middle of the night and would feel this strong presence in the corner of my room by the door. I oddly never felt frightened as the energy felt. I don't know, maybe it was type of a female energy, so to speak. I would just roll over and fall back asleep after staring into the dark for a bit. I would also feel strange in the guest bathroom and would avoid going in there at all costs. I thought at the time that it was lightning. That was strange, but it was very bright and reminded me of a Sephora or makeup store. It would just make me feel extremely aware and anxious. The event that started amping up the activity was when I fell sick for 2 weeks. I almost never got sick, but this time I was incredibly unwell and ended up going to the doctor who gave me antibiotics. And so I turned out to be allergic to. So I got more ill and had a bad rash all over my chest and stomach. During this time, I was sick and I stayed in the guest bedroom. So, as my parents were redoing their bathroom, and they also did not like the guest bathroom, so they used mine. I hated being in the guest room when I was sick. I was in the most confusing fever dream at all times and felt like I was being watched and that the energy was being sucked out of me. And again, this is very copy paste from so many stories where there's demonic presence in the room because they suck out the energy both from the room and from your body because they need energy to manifest or to grow even more powerful. I felt like a huge dark weight was on me when lying down. I would feel better if I left the room and slept on the couch or snuck into my room. I heard voices speaking to me in the dead of night that despite being sick I couldn't brush off as I was self-aware enough to know I had a burning fever and probably was hallucinating. When I finally got better and got to my room, I slept like a baby the first night until the energy followed me there. I would wake up every night and the energy in the corner of my room would suddenly feel threatening instead. I would hear new noises in my room that had never been there before. I know exactly what the AC sounds like, how often it turned on, and the noise the door would make when it would turn on. Or my dogs would lay up against it on the other side. I know all of these noises. But I started hearing noises from behind me, which made no sense as it was just a wall. It sounded like scratching. I had complained about it so much, we ended up getting our house checked for a rodents. That happened in our building a few years ago when someone left the door open and we had some rats going in our drywalls. And this is not happening on other continents because we have brick walls inside the houses, so there's no way something can enter your walls because they're all made of bricks. But this happened in our building here in Chicago. So I remember the noise and just the problem with sleeping because you would hear rats scratching the wall after midnight. So they called for the pest control but nothing. Around this time, I even got touched when I would walk down the hallway past the guest bathroom. It was always so subtle, but I wouldn't realize until I had walked into the kitchen. So she would be touched, but it would be so soft, so subtle that she wouldn't pay so much attention to it until she would continue walking and then start thinking and dwelling on this. I also started listening to music 24/7 at home, so I wouldn't react if the spirit or spirits would speak to me. I felt like acknowledging it would make it worse, so up until this point, I had tried to ignore all of this and brush it off. But one night, my parents went out for dinner and would get me something to go on their way back, so I could stay at home and chill. I was standing in the laundry room, which is right by our open concept living room and kitchen. I was scooping dog food from my two German shepherds. Thankfully, she wasn't alone. She was with two dogs who were hovering over their bowls next to me. Suddenly, I heard a lady say, "Hey, T." T is the nickname my family uses for me. And since it was a woman's voice, I turned around and I say, "Yeah," thinking it was my stepmother. So she responded to this voice. My gaze automatically locked on the hallway that precedes the kitchen straight across from me when I realized I was home alone. I looked down at my dogs next to me, and they also had their eyes glued to the same spot as me and reacted at the same speed. So the dogs also heard the voice. I walked a few steps out, and my dogs followed timidly, which was strange. Suddenly, like I was in a very cheesy horror movie, my dog's bowl rolled from behind the kitchen counter and stopped when it hit the wall ahead of us. So the ball behind them just.
Hmm.
Keep in mind that my dogs were sitting right next to me, so they couldn't have dropped the ball that would be rolling. So I was in a shock, but I remembered my family had the Live 360 app where we can see each other's location. So I checked, and my parents were going well over the speed limit on the freeway 20 minutes away. I didn't even know what to do, so I just fed my dogs with tears in my eyes and went to hide by my desk in my room. The scariest event that happened, although terrifying, and sat with me for a long time, and I still take it with a grain of salt, as I had smoked some weed a few hours before. Okay, this helps us to get more context, which doesn't mean she was hallucinating, because dogs didn't hallucinate, but it still at least brings some more info to the background of the story.
Yeah.
I hadn't tried it many times before that, but had gotten home and took a nice warm shower and listened to some music. I normally got super paranoid when I'm high, but I was coming down from it, and I was more relaxed than usual. So I was relaxed, and I even walked around my room naked. Okay, we didn't need that info, lady. After I had gotten out of the shower, which is something I never do, as I'm extremely reserved, and so I find clothing comforting. But I was walking around my room and wanted to move my ball of sewing pins from my dresser over to my desk. I dropped the ball and had to bend down and dig into my nude carpet to find all of them again. Again, too much information, lady. As I bent down, all naked and vulnerable, I suddenly felt like the walls were closing in on me and heard whispers from the walls, I guess. It was coming from all around as I was hurrying to pick all the pins. My vision also started to blur as I was feeling a tightness in my chest. Suddenly, I heard a deep growl from over my shoulder that made my entire body tense up, and all the hairs raised and instant goosebumps along with tears in my eyes. I jumped into my bed to feel a sense of comfort and hide my body from this invisible thing. I think she made many mistakes, including that she separated herself from dogs. At least with those two German shepherds, she could have felt somewhat of safety.
Hmm.
I laid in my bed and hid like a little kid, even though I was 16 years old. I had never been so frightened in my life. I lied there for so long and had to pee so bad, but dreading having to get up again. I FaceTimed my best friend to comfort me and explain what had happened, so I felt safer getting up, quickly throwing on some clothes, and went up to the bathroom. This experience scared me so bad, and I didn't touch weed for over 2 years. But when I hit Uni, the app that was where she could share with her family, I became a functional pothead during exams and had never had any experiences like this when high. After this event, nothing major and scary happened again. I would still hear a woman's voice from time to time. Okay, so this is when she was on high. So this again helps the story that, yeah, something could have been triggered by weed, but not everything. So she would continue hearing this voice from time to time, and our kitchen sink would turn on so I could hear it from my room. That's bizarre. But that was the last time that I was scared of anything paranormal. After my family moved to another state, nothing else has happened to me since. My stepmother threw my Ouija board. Thank you, Lord, finally. During the move, so it never got to touch the base in the new house. And that's good. You want to have a new, fresh beginning, a new chapter in your life because you've been dealing with this and you shouldn't. So that's a good thing that you're dealing with the past in a good way. Just cleanse your past as best as you can. I feel that from playing with the Ouija board, I opened up some sort of contact that otherwise wouldn't have been known. I have tried to psychoanalyze the situation that was living situation I was in. My family was extremely emotionally toxic, and we had our issues, and that's for sure. So I was concerned if the mental toll of my family dynamic manifested itself in some anxieties to this unseen force. I don't know if that triggered it, but it could be maybe expanded or enlarged if there was trauma, like we talked in some previous stories that can
Yeah.
can somehow impact the force to become more dynamic or more powerful or more like expanded or extended in the area where it dwells, and this time would be in your home, because all these things are feeding off the energy, and the energy includes fear, anxiety, depression, anger, loneliness, being angry, depression, all of these things. However, in the new house, nothing has ever happened, and our family dynamic became worse there. So I don't believe this was the cause. Okay, she's being rational. I like this. And now this is the ending. I would like to hear what you think. Was I paranoid? Okay, this is just her asking us. But wow, that was a long story, and the story that she was expanding on it. She brought more details. I think that while weed could have contributed to some things, I really believe that this was demonic, especially because dogs reacted to it,
Yeah.
and that weed only could have enhanced something. But even when she stopped using weed, these things continue happening in that house with the voices. So besides that, which is obvious what I said, what would you add on this?
Not much. Just seems, yeah, like you said, she's rational about some things. So I would say it seems pretty realistic because of that. Because she was rational about how she explained the family dynamics got worse after she left. And, it's interesting the Ouija board was a part of that. It's interesting she never actually experienced anything with the Ouija board, but she still had some paranormal experiences sort of seemingly disconnected from the Ouija board. So, I mean, it's just the presence of it, which that could tell you it's the presence of it, or it could tell you that it wasn't related. I personally feel like it's probably the presence of it that was maybe the cause of that, but because what else was the cause of it, I feel like stuff like this doesn't just happen. I always say this about the Bible too. I kind of feel like stuff that we see in the Bible that happens, it didn't just happen for no reason or to be shocking or whatever. Like Acts, Pentecost, speaking in tongues. There's a reason for that. Like one of the major reasons for that is a reversal of Babel. They didn't just start speaking in tongues to be for the sake that it's a miracle. Just for the miracle's sake. That's not why. There's a reason that miracle happened the way it did. But there's a history to that. And I feel like that's also the case with paranormal experiences. It just usually probably it doesn't just happen out of the blue. There's like a reason for it. There's a history with the person. There's something that happened in the vicinity, like the presence of a Ouija board, the presence of a cursed object, maybe the actions of the person, the mental state of the person, maybe a family generational dynamic. Like these are the questions that like an exorcist will ask when they come into a situation, I feel. And so anyways, yeah.
Okay, we'll skip the last story, but if you can just read the next one, and then we'll do the concluding part, please.
Skip the last one, or skip the next one and then read the last one?
We'll skip the last one, but you can read the next one. This happened in June of 2022.
Yeah, okay. Okay. This happened in June of 22, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since. My buddy lives in a rural Welsh village with a population that I assume to be less than 100. Houses are fairly spread out, and it's around 3 to 4 miles away from the nearest town or village. When I head up there to stay with him, we enjoy going on nighttime walks along the country lanes, since it's really quiet there, and there are barely any cars out after 10 p.m. And this particular night was no different. I feel the need to include that this house is connected to an old chapel, and he's responsible for cleaning it, looking after it, etc. Beforehand, we had been messing around in the chapel, throwing footballs around and having a laugh. But we thought nothing of it. Less than a half of an hour later, we headed out to go on a walk. It was me, my buddy Lucas, and our friend Reese. Now, Lucas knows these roads like the back of his hand. He's lived there practically his whole life and has walked this particular route that we headed home along more times than he can count. We were walking, ended up just about a mile away from the nearest village where an old abandoned hotel used to be. The building's been knocked down by now, but there are fences blocking where it used to be. This didn't creep us out much, but what happened next did. Lucas pointed through a thick layer of trees at what seemed to be a house with no lights on at all. And despite walking this way many times before, he had never seen the house. He insisted that the architecture was a lot different to the houses we usually saw around this area. It was sort of European or Germanic, as he claimed. His family is German. And he wanted to get a closer look, but the house was blocked off by a construction fence as well, which we thought was really weird. I shone my phone light through the fence, and we got a quick glimpse of the actual building, but then came a weird feeling of dread. And we all got this feeling at the same time. It was eerily quiet, no wind, no bugs, no nothing. Now, feeling incredibly uncomfortable, we continued along the trail a little further away from the house. Nearby was a wall blocking off a field, and so we sat on the wall to kind of comprehend what had just happened. Across the field, about a mile off, maybe less, was the village's church. We had tried to laugh the situation off, covering our uncomfortable feelings with jokes, until a single church bell rang out across the field. Just one. By this time, it must have been around 11:30 p.m., so it wouldn't have made sense for the church bell to be ringing. And even so, it only rang once, which wouldn't have made sense either. We all kind of looked at each other, and Reese insisted that she felt like we shouldn't have been there, speaking exactly what we were all thinking. Me and Lucas agreed, and we quickly continued onto the path and through a wooded area. Never good. And the walk back to Lucas's place was long and grueling, and the feeling of dread didn't help at all. We didn't speak about the experience the whole way back until we felt safe enough to. Lucas was hung up on the fact that he had never seen the house before and had never felt uncomfortable in this particular area before, despite doing this nighttime walk countless times. So we searched around the area on a live satellite system and discovered that where the house should have been, there was nothing but a patch of dirt and some shrubbery. The whole situation seemed completely messed up to us. Everything just felt wrong. The house, the church bell, even the feeling we got whilst being in the area. The feeling of not being welcomed. Reese did a quick search online on ley lines, and if any of them cross each other in that area. Ley lines are prehistoric lines that run across the UK, and some believe them to be hotspots of paranormal activity. And much to our horror, we discovered that exactly where we were sitting on the wall, two ley lines crossed each other. To us, that explained why we must have felt so uncomfortable, like we were unwelcomed. We decided to go back the next day, and in the daylight discovered that the house was not there. The three of us were completely sure that we had seen a building, and Lucas going as far as to say that he could see the architectural structure of the house. Even in the comfort of the daylight, the area just felt wrong. It sounds insane, I know, but it's been itching my brain for the past few weeks, and I needed to tell someone about it because my family doesn't believe me. Lucas and Reese's family don't believe them either. My hope by getting the story out there that someone might have an explanation as to why the house was there and then suddenly wasn't. An explanation as to why we felt so scared and dreading what would happen if we stayed in the area. I can't help but think it had something to do with us messing around in the chapel. Maybe I sound insane, but this whole situation doesn't sit right with me. We all felt the same thing. We were certain that the house was there that night and then wasn't the next. We know what we saw and we felt, but we have no explanation for it. It's like, didn't he have a phone, like taking pictures of the house? I don't know.
Well, maybe they weren't interested. Maybe they're like, "Oh, we never saw this. Oh, it looks abandoned and scary from the distance." And they continue walking. They weren't sitting around that area or dwelling there, for a while.
Yeah.
So I understand, like, you wouldn't take photo. I mean, I was just in Europe for 2.5 weeks. I barely took any photos. You don't always even think about it, or sometimes you're just enjoying the moment, or you're like,
scared.
I'll make some photos later. So it could be different reasons, but I don't think that God will somehow punish them by making them see the house that doesn't exist, and they'll feel dread because they felt dread not from God, they felt just dread from something paranormal. So, which doesn't excuse them from playing football in the chapel, because that's a supposedly sacred ground. It's God's ground, even if it's abandoned. Your friend is keeping this clean and maintaining. So show reverence, even if it's abandoned. Like it's supposed to be God's house. So I don't know if these two would be connected, but this is, I think, my favorite story from all the stories we talked about tonight. And the thing is that the house was never seen before. Then all three of them sit. Then after that disappears. It almost feels as if for a short time, for 24 hours or so. I'm not saying I believe this, but it sounds like two dimensions
Yeah.
or two realities somehow. Let's say this is one line, this is another line of reality. They got
Yeah.
connected for 24 hours or so, and then just
Yeah.
disconnected again. That's how it sounds like. Like they almost had a window to another universe, or another
Yeah.
or another world, or another dimension. Like
Yeah.
maybe similar to what's happening in like Stranger Things, right? They got
Yeah. That was my thought too.
yeah, they got the open window to the upside down world. Because, and what they didn't see, they
Yeah.
didn't see something beautiful like, oh, it's a seashore, it's a castle, it's a valley. No, they saw a spooky abandoned house that, like we see in so many horror movies, like that's the last place in your life where you want to come, because there's a monster, there's a ghost, there's a whatever. Like I just watched the remake of the movie It, right, with that clown that is actually a monster, which was remade a few years ago. And actually, they made two movies out of one movie, because it's like 4 hours footage, or maybe even five put together. So I remember that house, but that house is what we see in so many horror movies. Like that's the last place you want to go. Even with 10 friends, still it gives you that dread, that like feeling of like, man, it's like the host of this place, it's so unholy, so wicked. I don't want to go there. Like everything in you, your gut feeling is telling you that's not where I should step. I don't want to be poking the bear, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's why it's my most favorite story for tonight, because it's like there is nothing there, then there is, and then there isn't anymore. And again, if it would be one
Yeah.
person, again, we can question their mental health, we can mention if they consume something. But for three people to hallucinate the same thing, come on, we know this from scholars who've been researching resurrection. They say if one person thought they saw Jesus, yeah, they could be having hallucination. But 500 people having the same hallucination, that doesn't happen. You
Yeah,
can check your
that's
medical
true.
textbooks, doesn't happen. So for three people in the same time to see the same hallucination, that doesn't happen. Usually hallucinations would be individual. There's something that you just mentioned earlier, mass hysteria, but to have hysteria from something and hallucination, that's not the same. So this is why I think that their story is believable, but I would not know if this story is connected with them playing football and in a way being disrespectful towards the chapel. Because if God was in that place where people would come in and serving him, I don't think he would just try to scare them by telling them, "Oh, look what's on the other side." It's almost like it's like, no, this was like more demonic. God will not use demonic tools to intimidate people.
Yeah.
So again, very fascinating. And I'll stop here and I'll let you talk. But it also reminds me of a story that Sean and I covered year and a half ago, maybe even more, where in Italy, a couple went to see this abandoned, like a fortress or a castle. And it was so long, and they had to climb through the stairwell so many floors. I don't know how long. It was a long way up. And the guy said that while before they entered this fortress or castle, it was beautiful weather, clear blue sky, daylight. He said to the moment they came to the roof of that fortress or whatever it was, he said it was incredible, severe weather, like lightning, thunderstorm. He said we felt like we came to another dimension. Like, how did this happen so soon? It's not natural, it's not normal. He
Yeah.
felt as if they were like in the same geographic position, but spiritually they were somewhere else. So this story reminds me of that story.
That's crazy. That reminds me of a Stephen King book, The Talisman. I read that when I was a kid, and it's about this little object that this kid I don't remember if he finds it or it's given to him, but when he has it, he can transport himself to an alternate universe, or and in that alternate universe, everyone has they're the same people exist, but they're different. They're different. Like it's the same person, but their whole existence is different because it's a parallel universe, basically. But he has this little object, and he can, at will, he can be transported to the alternate universe. It's a fascinating book. It's along the lines of what you were saying, but I don't know. I think the chapel, I feel like it's more, we know you were in the chapel earlier, dong, more so than God being involved. I feel like you're right that it wouldn't be God doing anything. I feel like it's more the spirits involved for some reason, letting them know, that they were in the chapel. I don't know. It's weird.
Or maybe like you don't belong here, like move along. Maybe something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I mean, certainly that's the feeling they had, so that makes sense. But yeah, that's kind of cool. I don't know why it is, but I was always fascinated with that Stephen King book. And so yeah, it's funny you kind of mention that, but that was a good bunch of stories. It really is interesting. I haven't read stuff like that in a while, if ever, stuff exactly like this, and that's it's kind of neat to see. So there was a Reddit thread out there with all these, huh? I suppose there were more stories, even more than these, on the Reddit thread, huh?
Yeah, I was collecting this while ago, let's say a year ago or more.
Oh, okay.
There are probably more stories by now, and people probably post all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dane, I'm sorry we went over 2 hours. This was not planned. I thought because we didn't have too many stories, I thought we'll be done like in an hour and a half. But we enjoyed getting our stories dissected
Yeah.
and comparing them with the Bible, with the mysterious, with the occult, with exorcists, with priests, with movies and novels and books and whatnot that we seen or heard or played or watched in our lifetime. So it was so much fun. And if we didn't stop, I think we could have gone for easily another hour or so, because there's so many rabbit trails from all of these stories, how you can develop and parallel or compare the stories to, like, oh, this reminds me of this reminds me of this. So I just want to say, this was one of the best supernatural / horror discussions I had in a while, because you would need someone knowledgeable who was maybe not firsthand experience, but at least to read or hear similar stuff like this, so that you can hypothesize about different theories and different paths where conclusions can go. So I appreciate that you being well read and open minded, so that we can, like, what if, well, we don't know, but still it's interesting to, like, speculate. So
It is.
I want to thank you for this 2.5 hours time. I pray God blesses your ministry. I hope it blossoms. I hope you get all the help and sources and material out there that many people will benefit. I hope we will do something, if not similar, but maybe some of the biblical theology episodes, discussions in the future. And yeah, I'm looking forward to those moments, and I'm looking forward to testimonies where God is showing up more in your ministry and life, doing amazing things where we can rejoice and seeing something that you're just beginning to do with your ministry and how it grows. Just like, I don't want to give example of this house, but let's say it's a tower that you're building with God. So the foundation block is Jesus, and you're building on that, and we want to see how it's growing so that we can praise God and rejoice with you together. So thank you for this time. Do you have any concluding message when it comes to these stories or to the audience about anything?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. Just that this was a lot of fun, and I always like coming on here and talking about all sorts of things. I love how the conversation goes in all sorts of directions, and this is it's the kind of thing I love doing, is just getting together and talking about these kinds of things with friends. So appreciate it. It's fun.
Thank you, brother. May God bless you. And I also want to invite everyone this Sunday, 6 p.m. I'll be having a very VIP guest. I'm not saying others are not VIP, but I had to make a phone call and speak with this archaeologist who went to the Mount of Transfiguration, who went to Mount Hermon, who is the only foreigner that was actually allowed to live there and allowed to explore and investigate this place, who will be speaking with me about the Mountain of Transfiguration, local gods, Mountain Hermon, the fallen Elohim, Nimrod, and God knows how many things this Sunday, 6 p.m. Central Time. So you will want to tune in. Please subscribe, share, like, do all these things that I ask you every time. It really blesses me and helps me and encourages me to continue making this material, for free, and to continue using this ministry as a platform that will hopefully touch the hearts of many people worldwide. So God bless you, Dain. God bless all of you watching either live or in the days and weeks and months to come. And I shall see you in less than 48 hours. Take care.